Hey, welcome back to another episode of Addicted to Gear. Thank you for joining me once again. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about a company that's been in the newspapers quite a bit lately, and not for good reasons, and that's Gibson. Unfortunately, Gibson has found itself in a bit of a pickle. They are doing everything they can to kind of get out of a $500 million debt that they found themselves in. And unfortunately, Gibson, as iconic as they are, a guitar company, seems to be digging themselves deeper and deeper into debt. And unfortunately, their credit rating was downgraded as well. So I wanted to give you my impression as to what I think is going on within the company. And it's just my best guess. I'm not an employee of Gibson, so I can't really say. But all the signs that, that we see kind of lead us to get an impression of what's going on. I mean, first of all, we have the CEO of the company that does not have a reputation as being the type of guy that's putting the employees first. He seems like, from what I've read and seen, that he is mostly putting the bottom line first at any cost. And that's never a good thing. When a company CEO doesn't really care about, quality, craftsmanship, or the people that are creating these works of art, because that's exactly what a guitar is. It's a work of art. Then, employees tend to lose respect for upper management. There's a lot of internal turmoil, a lot of issues of people coming and going within the company, people mandated to increase profits and sales at any cost. And that's where crazy ideas pop out. We've seen Gibson come out with their share of crazy ideas, including the Robo-Tuner. Everybody knows what that is. It's, the tuners that were automatically tuning your guitar. Look guys, it's pretty simple. Guitarists they're pretty simple when it comes to what they need. Okay, they don't need anything crazy. A lot of times, whenever I see companies trying to come out with things that are a little bit off the wall, they usually flop. They usually fail. People are very traditional, especially guitarists. They don't like to see big changes in their instrument. They like to see changes if it affects the quality and the craftsmanship and the sound, obviously. But if it's just like bells and whistles that don't really have any great practical impact on the instrument, usually it's a fad. It comes and goes very, very quickly, and people often don't want to pay extra money for these things, especially when the guitars themselves are very expensive. And in the case of Gibson, we know that the Gibson Les Pauls and the Gibson 335s are very expensive. If you go and buy a reissue Gibson guitar, it's going to cost you quite a bit of money. And let's face it, nobody wants to spend that kind of money. Things are very expensive as it is, and musicians that are starting off playing guitar can't afford to go out and buy a $3,000 Gibson Les Paul Standard. They're going to opt for something that comes from overseas, something that's less expensive, and truth be told, very often is just as good, is very well built. More and more often now we're seeing companies coming out with products from overseas, and they're every bit as good, ounce for ounce, as an American-made counterpart. So, yes, we do want to have jobs in the US. We do want to make sure people can make a living, and the people that are working for Gibson, definitely we don't want them to lose their jobs. But at the end of the day, labor is very expensive in the US, and unfortunately, if the labor is expensive and it drives up the cost of the guitar, and the guitar is not being made any better, unfortunately people will find an alternative. In many cases, there are many alternatives. So that doesn't put Gibson in a good place. Now, recently, Gibson announced that they were going to sell off one of the plants that they have where they create the 335s, the hollow body series, and that was in Memphis. Never a good thing. Never a good thing for companies to be selling off property, and I'm hoping that the people that were working there don't lose their jobs. Hopefully they'll just be relocated somewhere else within the company. But I mean, look, the rot within a company starts at the top, and if the CEO doesn't get his act together, things are going to be rough. Just go, you don't have to take my word for it. Go to glassdoor.com, look up Gibson, and just look at what the comments are that people are leaving for the management at the company, and you'll see that there's big problems there. And I think that's part of the reason why they ended up in the situation that they're in now. Also, when a company gets to a certain size, and Gibson is huge, they're forced to keep on making money, and they're forced to keep growing, and they tend to invest in spin-offs. And in Gibson's case, they invested in an audio company called Onkyo, which was very popular back in the 80s. They actually made some very good audio equipment back then, but unfortunately, ever since Gibson purchased them, we didn't really hear much about them, and the brand itself seems to have kind of disappeared. And I don't know if this is the Gibson effect or whatnot, but it's just one of those things where they could have, again, helped that company create more innovative products, But again, when you start focusing on things that deviate from your primary focus, which is making guitars at Gibson, this is what happens, Instead of Gibson focusing on robo-tuners and a whole bunch of other stuff, why don't they try to fix the things that, have been plaguing Gibson guitars for years and years? I mean, anybody that mentions Gibson usually starts to mention the fact that the guitar doesn't stay in tune. Gibson has always had tuning issues for years and years. Maybe that's why they came out with a robo-tuner, to kind of hide the fact that they had issues. And look, it's pretty straightforward. If you have tuning issues, most of the time it's here at the nut. And when they went to the Plek system, they were cutting the nuts with the Plek machine, and unfortunately the angle in many cases was badly cut, the wrong angle, and it would cause the strings to snag. And it's a pretty easy fix, guys. It's nothing. You guys know how to fix that. Look, I have a PRS guitar that I keep, and sometimes I don't use for months and months. But it's I pull it out of the case, and it stays in tune perfectly. Come on, it's not that difficult. Focus on the little things. Instead of trying to cram new products down our throats every quarter, fix the stuff that needs to be fixed. How many times have you seen a Gibson Les Paul with a broken headstock? That's another issue that's been plaguing Gibson for years. 335s, you drop them, that's it, the headstock pops off. Now, that's an easy fix too. If you look at what Fender's doing with the EVH line, they have reinforcement rods that are put into the neck that are carbon fiber, that are just making the whole thing a lot more rigid and strong. They can easily do the same thing, It's a shame that they're trying to stay traditional in flawed designs that they can easily fix and make the guitar a whole lot better. And instead they're focusing on giving us, rainbow colors, or giving a flashier top on the guitar, but at additional cost. I mean, finally, the bottom line is the guitars are expensive as they are now. And Gibson just released another notice saying that as of November 1st, all their guitars were going to go up 10%. I mean, I think this is their way of trying to dig themselves out of the hole. With that kind of logic, they're just going to end up deeper in the hole. Because people that already can't afford the guitars as it is are going to be even less likely to go out and buy a Gibson Les Paul. If you're a struggling musician, if you're a new musician, a young person trying to start off, I don't think you're going to go out and buy a $3,000 Gibson Les Paul Standard. You're going to get something in your own price range that gives you enough value that you would be happy with for a while, and then if need be, maybe upgrade later on. But to spend that kind of money on a guitar from the get-go is highly unlikely. Now look, I'm not trying to rain on the Gibson name. Gibson is iconic. It's always been. I mean, my big guitar hero from when I was a kid has always been Jimmy Page. And that image of Jimmy Page with the dragon pants on stage playing his Gibson Les Paul or his double neck SG. You know, that is kind of engraved in my mind, and for sure that's one of the reasons why I went out and ultimately bought a Gibson Les Paul. I probably wouldn't have done that otherwise, but I bought one and I got lucky. I got one that didn't have any issues, and I have a 335 as well that I love, but they're not cheap guitars, and if I had to do it over again, I don't know if I'd be buying too many Gibson Les Pauls. I have a couple of Tokais which are made in Japan, and ounce for ounce they're every bit as good as my Gibson Les Pauls, and I have two of them, and I paid them a fraction of the cost that the Gibson Les Paul cost me. You know, so I took a chance on it, and you know, I don't regret my purchase. I'm happy that I own one, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I'd run to the cash register with the stuff that they've been cranking out lately. Case in point, they came out with a whole line of new guitars that are double cut guitars. And just to give you an example, those things, in my opinion, look hideous. They're double cut, they have this weird shaped headstock. I'll try and find a photo and put it up for you guys so you know what I'm talking about. But I mean, this is a perfect example. Why would you come up with ugly guitars like that? You know, it's, I can't understand the mentality or who's dreaming up these things. You know, they're trying so hard to reinvent themselves that they're just shooting all over the place without aiming anywhere, and it's going to end up that they're going to be in a lot more trouble if they don't get their act together. So Gibson, like, overall, you know, take a negative and turn it into a positive. This is a wake-up call. This is a wake-up call to make you understand that people are not happy with the direction that you're taking on some obvious choices, and that you should really try to get your act together. Put people first, put quality first. It's a craft. Building a guitar is a piece of art. You have to have craftsmen that enjoy and are good at what they do. You can't just crank out stuff just to say you're cranking it out, because people will find alternatives, and there's a lot of alternatives out there right now. The cost of making a guitar in the United States is extremely expensive. You know, I understand that we want to keep labor in the United States, but when guitars that are coming out of Indonesia and Japan and other places overseas are every bit as good, if not better, than stuff coming out of the plant in the US, it's a sad state of affairs. You know, I definitely want the Gibson Les Paul, the Gibson name to remain. I think they can do it. I think they can pull through, but they're going to need to restructure. They're going to need to put a lot of new things in place in terms of trying to keep the costs down while giving more value to their customers. If they can do that, I believe they can pull through. I would hate to see the name Gibson disappear or be owned by someone else, which can very well happen. But guys, that's my rant. I think I went on long enough. I just wanted to get things off my chest and just give you my impression of some of the things that I feel are wrong with what's going on at Gibson. I would love to hear your comments. I would like to hear what you guys think. Are you fans of Gibson? Do you avoid Gibsons? What's your take? I'm very curious to hear your comments. So please leave your comments below. I'll answer some of them if I can. I always read through them, so I'm very actively into what people are saying when they're watching my videos. So please comment below. In the meantime, guys, stay tuned. Please subscribe and keep rocking. There'll be more great stuff coming your way.